India is not a country, it's a continent. My mind reels at the scope and spread of her vastness. From the snow-crusted Himalayas or Himalayas, India stretches further and further to her tropical south like a giant goddess. Her foods vary radically from state to state, from province to province. There are millions of people, for instance, who eat no meat, and there are other millions who call eggs and fish vegetables. Now that is a touch of whimsy that I find irresistible. The climate can be described in a word: contrast. The hot season can be blistering. The monsoon floods a large portion of the country every year, and the snows in the north are virtually eternal. When I mention the foods of India, most people immediately think of curry, and then blistering, searing, spicy heat. To some extent, this can be true. In the hot season, the appetite lags and droops, so naturally one needs hot, spicy food to whip the appetite into an acceptable frenzy. And then, of course, during the rainy season or monsoons, with its pouring rains and bone-chilling winds, we need hot, spicy foods to stoke the inner furnaces, to heat the body. I usually try to use a little less spice than most authentic Indian recipes call for, since some of the traditional dishes are virtually incandescent in their heat. That's the way my wife likes them, but not me. But I do strive to maintain an authentic note. Considering the scope of India's continent, the foods available boggle the imagination. There are vegetables and fruits that are unrecognizable to many Westerners. Milk products are exploited. Cottage cheese and yogurt are used extensively. And considering that much of India is very near the water, fish, of course, is a main protein source, along with chicken, eggs, and some vegetable combinations. So let's explore the cuisine developed for the Maharajas. As Westerners, we traditionally think of meals coming in separate courses. An Indian meal, say in the region of Parsi or Bengal, or for that matter anywhere on the continent, is served much differently. A large number of dishes are brought out at one time, usually by a succession of small uniformed boys. The different foods and condiments are placed in the center of the table. Everyone eats, orchestrating his own meal, contrasting sweet against sour, hot against cold, soft against crunchy. The possibilities are endless, of course. Much of the interest of the meal lies in your own creativity and sense of adventure. So we will explore a number of dishes, some simple and some complex, and you can create a feast worthy of an Indian emperor. Since curry comes to mind first, let's begin there. Now, we can either buy a commercially prepared curry powder, or we can have the fun of creating our own. I like to make my own curry seasonings, which are known as masala in the Indian dialect. I like grinding my own spices because I can control the freshness and quality of the spices. To make my masala, I put in 1/4 cup of whole cloves and 1/4 cup of granulated pepper. I put it into the electric blender. I then break a 2-inch stick of cinnamon into pieces and put it in with the pepper and the cloves. I then add a tablespoonful of turmeric, 2 tablespoons of cardamom seeds, and a tablespoon of coriander seed. I start the blender off slowly and grind the spices till they are well pulverized. I then store my curry powder or masala in an airtight container. It will keep for about a week. I tend to sprinkle it on lots of things just for fun, like cottage cheese or baked chicken or even peanuts or popcorn with melted butter, not to mention it's finding its way into my curry sauce, of course. A good curry sauce can be a lifesaver when I have unexpected company. I can then broil chicken pieces or saute them and cover them with the sauce and bake them for 45 minutes at 350 degrees, and with the garnishes and rice have a lovely informal dinner that only needs a salad and a dessert. If there's not a chicken in the house, curried meatballs are lovely, or even zucchini and eggplant cubes sauteed and baked with the sauce plus hard-boiled eggs. I've always believed that a little judicious faking and justifiable snobbery can carry off an emergency company meal with great style. So here's our lifesaver curry sauce. I first chop 2 onions in my blender with water and drain them well. I then melt 4 tablespoonsful of butter in a heavy kettle or saucepan and saute the drained onions until they are golden. I then stir in a heaping tablespoon of masala and cook the mixture for another minute to take the raw edges off of the curry powder. I then add a cup of yogurt, a marvelous vitamin and protein source, and simmer this mixture for about 5 minutes. I then peel 2 tomatoes. The easy way is to stab them one at a time with a fork and heat them over a gas flame on the stove until the skin bursts. It then peels right off. I then cut the tomato in half, hold it over the trash, and squeeze it till the seeds and the juice come out. That way we have pure tomato flavor, and our sauce is not watered down. I chop the tomatoes into small chunks and toss them into the sauce and simmer it all together, uncovered, until the sauce is thick and the tomatoes tender. That takes about 10 to 12 minutes. I then add 1/4 cup of raw cashew nuts and 1/4 cup of blanched almonds ground in the blender with a teaspoonful of salt. I then stir in a cup of heavy cream and I simmer the sauce for about 3 or 4 minutes. This makes a little over 2 cups of really heavenly sauce. It can keep for a week, covered tightly in the refrigerator, or it can be frozen for a month. A chicken sautéed in butter till lightly browned and then baked with a cup of this sauce in a covered bake dish for an hour and a half is really heavenly. I serve it with rice and garnish it with small bowls of bottled chutney and toasted coconut, mashed hard-boiled eggs, chopped green onions, chopped peanuts, and fried crumbled bacon. The effect is overwhelming, and your guests will think that you have slaved for hours. A more traditional Indian meal would be a feast with many side dishes and main courses. These are a mixture of hot and cold dishes, all providing pieces of contrast to build a meal on. The basis would be masala bhat, or spiced rice. The main courses, side dishes, and garnished are served over and around the pile of rice on each guest's plate. I always like to serve my rice in a large, impressive mound and surround it with all of the other side dishes. I try constantly to keep in mind the fact that we eat with our eyes, sometimes even more than with our stomachs or mouths. To make masala bhat, I heat 1/4 cup of oil in an oven-proof saucepan, and I stir in 2 cups of long-grain rice, 2 heaping teaspoons of masala or homemade curry powder. When the oil is almost absorbed, I stir in 4 cups of boiling water and tightly cover the saucepan and slip it into a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. At serving time, I mix in the grated rind of a lemon and its juice and garnish the masala bhat with shredded coconut. One of my favorite side dishes is Indian spiced green beans. I first put 2 peeled garlic cloves in my blender with 1/3 cup of water, a 1-inch seeded slice of lemon and its peel, plus a teaspoonful of salt. I blend this and set it aside. I heat 1/3 cup of oil in a 10-inch skillet with a lid, and then I saute 1/4 teaspoon of cumin seeds in the oil for about a minute. I then add 3 cups of frozen, thawed green beans and saute them for 3 or 4 minutes. I add the lemon-garlic mixture and turn the heat to low and then I cook the spiced beans for about 20 minutes or until they are just tender. Just before I serve them, I turn the heat up high and stir them till almost all of the liquid has evaporated. The beans have a lovely lemony aroma, and people never guess the mysterious rich flavor is nothing more than garlic. What fun. I like to serve a cold salad-type dish, too. The tart coolness contrasts beautifully with the spicy heat. I peel 4 tomatoes and then seed them and cut them into quarters or sixths. I then peel and thinly slice a white onion and toss it in with the tomatoes. In another bowl, I mix the grated rind of 1 lemon and its juice and 2 tablespoons full of oil. I stir in 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, salt and pepper, and drizzle the dressing over the salad and chill it well. I usually serve this on a flat plate covered with lettuce leaves. The red, white, and green are beautiful color contrasts. The Indian cuisine has many fascinating hot breads. One of the easier ones for us to reproduce is Pooris, or Indian fried breads. I merely thaw a loaf of frozen whole wheat bread dough and divide it into about 18 balls. I then flatten them into 3-inch rounds and let them double in size. When they have risen, which takes about 30 minutes, I heat 1 inch of oil in my electric skillet to about 370 degrees. What a blessing, even heating and no testing for temperature. I fry the rounds for about 30 or 45 seconds on each side and slip them on lots of paper towels to drain in a 200-degree oven. These should be served as soon as possible with a pitcher of honey and melted butter. They are divine, believe me. Your guests will worship you. These are some of the side dishes that make a meal in India such a delight. Any or, better yet, all of them are delightful. If I am feeling particularly ambitious, I make a real curry, plus all the side dishes. Many curries are made with meats on the bone, but for my guests, I only want to serve the finest. So I first cook 2 chickens in 6 cups of water with 2 tablespoons of minced onion, 2 bay leaves, a tablespoon of seasoned salt, and a tablespoon of pepper. I boil the chickens gently for an hour and a half and then cool them at room temperature in the broth. This keeps the meat extremely moist and allows it to absorb extra flavor from the broth. This can all be done a day or several days ahead if you want. I then skin the chicken and take all of the meat from the bone. If I'm doing this ahead of time, I then wrap it tightly and refrigerate it in the coldest part of the refrigerator. To make the curry itself is child's play. I peel and core 2 apples and chop them finely. I then saute them in 4 tablespoons of melted butter until they are crispy soft. I then put the chicken, apples, and a full recipe of our curry sauce into a large covered casserole and bake it at 375 degrees for 1 hour. A very simple but a very elegant dish. I always serve the chicken curry with Masala Bhat, or the spiced rice. The garnishes are everything. They transform the curry from a meal into an event. What fun to mix and match flavors and textures. I cover my table with the little bowls of condiments. We always have shredded coconut, chopped peanuts, raisins, mashed hard-boiled eggs, chutney. Major Gray's is my favorite, but I also like to look around for some really exotic and very hot ones. Then we have crumbled bacon, green onions, and chopped green peppers, and also a wonderful treat, lovely chopped up cucumbers. These are what transform the curry into a feast. Nothing makes a more exotic party. Cornally, I generally lower all the lights and burn a little incense to help create a mood. And then I have sitar records and put them on the stereo, and that helps tremendously. candles winking everywhere are very romantic. I generally serve beer, but some people prefer a very strong white wine. The visual display of the curry, the masala bhat, all the condiments, and the spicy green beans, and the fresh green salad, plus the pooris and honey, is really spectacular. Your guests will talk about this dinner party for weeks. After a meal of this caliber, a heavy dessert could be termed, well, suicidal. I generally brew a large pot of tea. If you have adventuresome guests, a pot of nice smoky lapsang sauchung is most refreshing, or if not, a Darjeeling is also quite proper. Those are both teas, by the way. I then try to serve a refreshing, cool fruit tray. I always have a fresh pineapple, and then I try for some mangoes or papayas. If a melon is in season, by all means serve it too. I generally arrange the fruit into a kind of still life and then supply my guests with sharp knives and lime wedges. A bowl of toasted coconut is another easy and charming garnish, and delicious too. I just open the bag of coconut and toss it in a pie plate in a slow oven until it is golden brown for about 20 minutes at 250, but watch it. A bowl of vanilla yogurt is another nice garnish, plus a bowl of honey. The fruit can be dipped in the honey and then the coconut, or simply drench it in the yogurt. It's a fun and a refreshing dessert after a memorable meal. This meal depends on you to create a mood, so be daring. Use a different tablecloth or a brilliant remnant of material. Pull out all the brass and copper you can find. Wear dangling earrings and a draped sari if you have it, and every bracelet you can find. And then you own the mystery of India from your dining room and your kitchen.